All right, well, good morning. So, Facebook is absolutely on crack this morning, and it's not letting me take the initially private stream public. So I may just take a moment here and try and see if I can't get that up and running. So I apologize. It normally works like a dream, but in any case, first of all, in case we haven't met, I'm Doug, and in case you haven't noticed, there's a crap ton of Line 6 gear here, and I'm actually playing through my good old Flex Tone Head, and if I actually muted my mic, sound about as cool as it does in the room here. In any case, if you can give me just a moment, I've got to just jump over and see if I can get the Facebook thing working. My apologies on the delay. This is not really how I like to start my day, but these things happen. In the meantime, jump into the chat, say hello, say where you're coming from, let me know what it is that you're drinking. I've got some pizza in my Optavia shake. And my apologies. Let me see what's going on with Facebook. I just saw somebody new jump on. I'm going to be back in just a moment. All right, they're gone. All right, I'll be back in just a second. So sorry. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to queue up a video while I'm trying to get Facebook up and running. Here we go. Okay, well, good morning. So we've got Facebook back online. It was just kind of having a 420 moment. In any case, good morning. In case we haven't met, my name is Doug, and this is Doppler's Gear Garage. And, well, I've got all this crazy Line 6 gear here because on Wednesday of this next coming week, I'm headed down to Los Angeles for a very special event that Line 6 is putting on. It's the 10th anniversary of Helix. Boom. And I've kind of pulled out a bunch of my kind of favorite Line 6 gear that's been hanging out around here. What you just heard there, while the stream was I was fixing whatever was going on with Facebook, was the HD500. That's actually, wait, hold on, where are you hiding? You're hiding on this side. That's my original HD500. I think that demo there was the JTV89F, the HD500X going out into Pro Tools. So in any case, for those of you that, kind of have been around as long as I have, and it was funny watching through all these old videos that I'm collecting for a video that's going to be a kind of a Helix celebration video I'm putting together, kind of watching how a little bit more gray hair than there used to be, but really how much I've enjoyed the experience of Line 6. So, in any case, just let me take a quick moment and first of all say hello, Chris. Great to see you. Always a pleasure. Sonia, good morning. Hello, hello. Scott, hello to you, my dear friend. Zach, yeah, so this is going to be a big week. So for those of you that aren't know, John, good morning. Albert, hello. Jerry, the vegan rocker. Line 6, again, is celebrating their 10th anniversary. For Helix, and it is potentially this giant event on Wednesday is either going to be announcing maybe the next generation of Helix or maybe some major update, or maybe they just decided to throw a birthday party. But the thing that I started doing last night, I just didn't get a chance to finish, and I'm not tweaking about these things anymore. I assembled kind of some of my favorite pieces of Line 6 gear and some of the different demos that I've done over the past 20 years. And, the crazy thing is this amp, and I get a chance to tell some stories that I'm not going to be able to tell in that video. So here goes. First of all, I want to briefly talk about Line 6's innovations and contributions to this whole thing, because chances are, let me ask down in the chat here, is there anybody that is not a modeling user? I want to know, are there any kind of holdouts like tubes only, tubes or die, speakers or no, whatever. I am a mixed media kind of guy, the ability to kind of run direct. And by the way, I'm going to get to the innovation, but what you're literally hearing is that amp going direct out. And again, once I mute my... So I guess I didn't mute it. Hold on, let's try that again. For something that's 20 years old and has been sitting in storage until I kind of pull it out of storage not that long ago, that amp is great. And so, all right, let me get down to very quickly the main innovations in my opinion. I think I'm going to go through 5. Let's see how I do. Number 1, Line 6 made it cool to use modeling gear. Like that in and of itself, like, I remember when I was working on I remember when I was working on one of the bands that I had that didn't go anywhere, but we spent a huge amount of money in the studio, and I remember seeing somebody come in with Pod, and I just remember looking at them and just kind of going, "Are you kidding? Or how could you walk into a studio with that?" And right around that time, I went to a NAMM show that I believe was Line 6's first NAMM show. And it was probably just a little bit before that. And when they announced what I believe is the AX series amplifier. And so I was kind of like, all right, this is interesting, but I didn't really dig the idea of somebody being in a big studio using digital modeling. So I was, kind of one of the naysayers kind of going, why would you use that in a studio? And of course, then that became the Rockman, if you will, of forever. And the great thing about Line 6, so innovation, number 1, they made modeling cool. Hands down. There aren't, many companies that can historically go, we changed the face of how guitar players use gear There are lots of other great modeling companies out there and companies who use modeling, but Line 6 was the game changer. Number 2, they made going direct awesome. So this amp is 20 flippin' years old, and like, again, let me see if I can mute my mic. Now, I am using some post effects, but the point being is, like, that's just nuts, right? What's going on, Nick? Good to see you, my man. So the idea is not only do you have modeling, but all of a sudden one of the biggest problems we've always had as players is, like, I have random access to just a massive range of tones. Now, I haven't saved this preset, and I'm not going to fuss around with that right now, but the ability to just be able to go to clean tone, dirty tone, in between, effects on and off, and with the push of a button, that was one of the other giant gifts that they gave us. There we go. Come on. So, you know, the idea of Mesa Boogie. So let's just, you know, when we come to innovation, there's a little bit of argument about this. If you were to look at the Orange people and the Mesa Boogie people as to which one actually came first. But I'm going to choose to believe that Mesa Boogie was the first production amplifier to actually include an effects loop. And so, again, if you think about innovation, the fact that Mesa Boogie uses a reactive load box and IRs in there points to that, and that, and that, and that. And just, you really just kind of begin to realize this, you know, this crazy company is just, you know, just really what they managed to do is so cool. All right, that's number 3. Number 4, the ability to craft your own tone, right? I mean, that's kind of the thing is that when you plug into an amplifier, yes, you can turn the knobs, yes, you can do that, but it's kind of like, you know, it's not like Burger King where you can have it your way, right? You got to kind of like, you got to bend a little bit to what the amp is going to do, and be prepared to be subjected to the amplifier being noisy, not noisy, loud enough, and quiet enough. All the things that you need, you know, to have happen on a live setting, and to have that, you know, literally with the push of a button, it's just there. It's just crazy. Then let's just talk about. Let's go straight over to Helix here. You know, as a piece of gear, I was thinking about this the other day. In terms of in the digital market, first of all, hello, who you just tuned in? Doug here. Good morning. Hi. Welcome. 10 years. There is no other piece of kind of digital modeling gear that has had a 10-year lifespan. And that is largely based, in my opinion, around this type of a concept. So basically, if you take a look at these two pedals right there, they look an awful lot alike. And this little part of these pedals right here lifts out. It's the same form factor, and if you take a look at the number of dials and twisty knobs and all of that, it's the same thing. So the concept of what they've done with Helix is kind of gone, hey, we've got a shell. We've got a great interface, which, by the way, as much as it doesn't have a touch screen, the whole unit is basically a giant tactile interface, and you just have such incredible control over this thing. So, in case you didn't know, if I want to make some adjustments on this particular effect or that one, all I have to do is touch that encoder or that foot switch, and automatically pulls it up on the screen. I mean, that sort of interaction, that tactile, mental, sonic interaction, they just kind of own that. So just really fabulous. So the idea of being able to take a shell and basically going, look, it's the equivalent of having a computer shell, but we're going to pull out the operating system and update it and create so much natural memory in there that you really have to go out of your way on that sucker to run out of resources. And I swim in some deep waters with some of these worship guys who like, let's have 5 reverbs. So, you know, they'll like use 2 giant reverbs and a bunch of delays. Amazingly powerful piece of technology. All right. So the neat thing about this gear is that it's so versatile. So let me throw up another demo here real quick, and let's go to, this is the firmware 2.8. Just it's a little mini little kind of jam, but again demonstrates kind of all the things I was talking about. I'm back. All right, I need to do one quick little thing. It would appear that as much as I tried to get Facebook to come along, and it said for a moment that it was going to do it, I decided not to. And I may just get a little baby echo here when I do the next thing, but I want to share this link. And let's see if I can do this. It would appear that... Yep, there we go. Hang on. There we go. I can do this. Thank you very much, Facebook. There we go. Streaming here. Facebook. Not working. Not streaming today. All right. In any case, that was firmware 2.8 you just heard. And the fact that, we're this far down the line, it's one of the things about the Line 6 ecosystem that I just love. Hey, by the way, all the new folks that have hopped on, Doug here, Doppler'S Gear Garage, if we haven't met, ask your questions, put them down in the chat. I am happy to answer them. We were kind of having a Line 6 moment, but there we go. With great pleasure, Guy. I wound up grabbing that Apollo X6. Awesome. Bigger learning curve than my old Focusrite, but I think it will be a nice upgrade. So sooner than later, in the midst of trying to do more things, which I love doing, I'm going to be doing some videos on recording for guitar players, and it's going to be on YouTube here. And as Guy pointed out, so many of us, when we first time we opened up a DAW, we all remember opening up our first audio interface and being so excited, and then plugging in the computer and kind of going, now what? Latency, how to mute tracks, how to arm tracks, how to not get squealing microphones going in the room, all these things that once you learn them, they're really very easy to manage, but before then, they're not. Kevin, I think you're new here. Welcome, my man. Good morning from Austin. Awesome. So using using Stomp XL, I love that, by the way. I used to own a Helix. I like the small form factor of the Stomp. I'm right there with you. So I actually have loaned, in one of my other lives, I am the editorial director for Worship Musician. I don't do as much as I used to with the magazine, but I'm still kind of involved in some of the stuff. And I do their House of Worship tech tracks at NAMM, and so the HX Stomp I've loaned to the guy that kind of does all the editing stuff, XL that is. It's probably my favorite form factor. So the thing about Helix, and so what we're going to do is we're going to have a little bit of a conversation. So I am under NDA with Line 6, so / Yamaha, YGG, Yamaha Guitar Group. So I cannot say whether I know or not if something new is coming out this week. I have a feeling, but I actually don't know for a fact. So even if I shared my feeling, I would probably be in violation of my NDA, so we're going to leave it there. However, on Wednesday, we're all going to know. And the thing is that whatever is going to happen is going to be exciting. At the very least, I think it'll probably be some sort of great firmware update. And the great thing about what Line 6 does is they kind of keep going, hey, they have enough architecture that they can do that. Now, what's great is these various other footprints, the smaller ones, and other things like, that's the DL4 back there, but the DL4 Mark II basically offloaded some of the models from Helix as they upgraded the DL4 Mark II. And the great thing about Helix Floor is with Helix Stomp XL, what you've got, and there's a funny story here, so here we go. So Eric Klein is the chief product architect at Line 6. He's a lovely guy, super smart, but one of the smart kind of guys you can actually have a conversation with because he's awesome. And the Line 6 folks are just awesome. That's one of the great things about them, as is the community of users and content creators. So the thing is that I was like, I love HX Stomp. That's a little baby one. But I was like, I just wish it had like maybe 4 more. Where's the box? Is it around here? No, sorry for that. That's a noisy chair, isn't it? I just wish it had. Morningstar makes this 6-button controller. That I was like, I just wish it had the Morningstar built into it. And Eric kind of reaches underneath his desk because this was before it was released, and he kind of goes, "You mean like this?" And I was like, "Yes." So what's great about them as a company is that they're always listening and they're always innovating. So whatever is going to happen this week is going to be cool. All right, let me scroll down a little bit. Dr. Phil, hello. Hello. Great to see you, my friend. It is a well, first of all, it's going to be live streamed, I believe, at 10:30 a.m. on Wednesday. It is a private event, so it's going to be at their headquarters in Calabasas. But everybody's invited to watch it online, and obviously if you go to line6.com or their Facebook page, I'm sure it's going to be streaming from there as well. I believe it's going to be streaming from there. Interesting thing. So this is one of those other. So we're going to talk about value propositions. That is to say, and we're going to mix it up. We're going to actually talk about some real world amplifiers. So 50 watt amp, 100 watt amp. Basically Helix LT, I think it probably stands for light. So it's a slightly less expensive, not quite as intensive version. The difference between a 50 watt amp and kind of like not quite so expensive, doesn't have quite so many features, is a 50 watt amplifier has lower headroom and generally has all the features in terms of feature set of the 100 watt head. But it's specifically allowing you to get into the headroom more easily. Now, that said, kind of over to the side of me are the pair of Badlander 100 heads that I now own because I just can't get enough. I started off with a pair of the Badlander 50 combos, but one of the things that I really missed after kind of buying the first 100 watt head that the 50 watts didn't do is they have a different output transformer. The Badlander 20, Badlander 50, and the Badlander 100, all three have different output transformers, and it dramatically changes the girth, the aggressiveness you can get out of the amplifier, and with the ability to take the 100 watt amp down to 50 watts and down to 20 watts, the 100 and the 50 are both running 4 tubes and then 2 tubes, your choice of EL34s, a quad or a quad of 6L6 and then to 2. Those are both running in pentode, 100 watt, 50 watt. But then when you go down to 20 watts, it goes to triode, also on 2 tubes. So the amp is behaving less efficiently. So you can kind of get that amp to soften up. But what you can't do with the 50 watt in that particular amp is kind of make it beefier. However, being able to get into the headroom in a live situation and all of that, there's a lot more, in my opinion, a value proposition for a 50 watt amplifier than there is kind of the LT, which is probably perhaps one of the reasons you sold it. And this is the real downside of this, one of my favorite phrases about how I feel about this community, because I regard what we do here as a community where we're together, right? Is that when you go to resell something like that, usually you take a bit of a hit because it's much harder to sell. Oh, no, no, no. I'm telling you, must have a Badlander 100. It is genius to have the ability to do that. So again, thank you. So that's probably innovation number 6. Sonia, no surprises coming from you. The idea, and the interesting thing is, I've become very friendly with a number of modeling companies, and first of all, the one of the people that I knew from Headrush is now over at IK. So the people move around, and a number of the people that I've known at Line 6 have migrated to other places. Jeff Slingluff, who was a dear friend, he died of COVID, which is still just inconceivable, was the guy who did DL4. He was involved in a bunch of the early Line 6 stuff, and then was the guy who was responsible for the Katana amps and the Waza Tube amp expander. And unlike many of the people that were operating at his genius level, he was not an EE, electronics engineering grad. He was like, I figured it out myself because, I don't know, I just messed with stuff. He was a true genius and just one of my dearest friends, and is sorely missed. Line 6er, this company, Adrian Hasselhuber, I think I actually pronounced that right, is now at Alesis, which is now part of Fender. And the monitors that I use, Alesis is not necessarily known as being the, kind of, how do I say, they're not as boutique-y as some other brands, but I tried these Alesis monitors out, and I absolutely flipped out about how great they make guitar sound. I don't know about you, but if I've got monitors, I want them to sound great for guitar. And I'm just going to say it. And I usually, whenever I cross this chrysalis, I usually regret it. So I apologize if I insult anybody's monitor. This is not intended to be said as an insult. To my ear, JBL speakers sound great for vocals because they are particularly great at enunciating all those little diction things that you want to hear with the vocals, but they seem to bring out all the characteristics that I never want to hear on guitar. So the thing is that, I wasn't necessarily thinking I was going to fall in love with these PreSonus speakers, but I'm now on my second generation with them, and they are just fabulous. I got a buddy that's got like a $5 million setup, not quite that expensive, but he came over here and he was like, what are those speakers? They sound great because they sound like guitar. I have the Headrush Core. No, so in any case, I digress. Braxo, what's going on? Good morning, my man. Hang on a second. I think we can give you a... I wasn't sure what key I was in. I'm in D. All right, there we go. What Line 6 pod is behind me? I missed the first part of the show. Is it protected under NDA? No, all of this stuff is not protected under NDA. So that's just the original good old pod. And so, ironically, if you take a look at the face of that amplifier and that, they're slightly different reds. But basically, Line 6, as Sonia pointed out, has been like, hey, we got peanut butter. We can put it in some chocolate. We can put it in a jar. We can put it on a piece of celery. We're in the peanut butter business. We don't care how you want it. We got you covered. Sorry, I started, Artie, hey, what's going on? Hang on a second. We're back to brew here. This is great. So per Sonia's point, so the interesting thing is, and we're going to actually talk about Fender for a second here as well, given how much buzz there is right now, you can't go wrong with focals. Given how much buzz there is in the industry right now, I think about this Line 6 thing, whatever is going to happen, I think a lot of people are just thinking all these different solutions through. And Fender was one of my cohorts that's going to be at this event. We got to talking about, the ToneMaster Pro. And they had the benefit of coming into the market later. And I think there's a lot of advantages. In case you guys don't know, Ron Minelli of RJM, who produces some of the most amazing controllers and stuff for the guitar community. So John Petrucci's rig, PBC6X. By the way, if you're looking for, I'm just going to say the best little small setup presets with different pedals, switch between, the PBC6X from RGM is just the best. It's just phenomenal. In any case, Ron and his wife Sherry were involved in the production of the Tone Master Pro, and it's a fabulous piece of gear. But, so there's advantages to being later to the thing. So the same thing with the IK folks. They've been kind of doing stuff in the background for quite some time. Amplitude has been around for quite some time. However, this whole Tonex thing they had the benefit of being able to see what everybody was doing kind of in the marketplace and kind of went, oh, we got this. So the Tonex plugin, like Helix Native, enables you to have all this stuff everywhere you go. And this round trip thing is really cool. And I didn't peel off, because it's going to be in this other video I'm going to do, a power cab video. But I had somebody specifically ask this week, because this is the other $1 million question, is kind of like, well, how do you make your modeler loud? All right, Artie, good morning, my friend. How are you? I think, well, how about, no, B flat. All right, turn a little late, waiting for caffeine to kick in. Come on. Cheers to you and the best channel out there. Holy cow. You must have a broken internet, but I will raise it up to that. Very kind, much appreciated. And I will tell you this, we have the most fun. We're the most fun. We're mother funners. I guess the caffeine has kicked in. All right. Okay, let's see here. So all monitors should have a YouTube auto shut-off feature, so listeners don't have to hear them on YouTube videos. So it's an interesting thing. There's a period of time that this whole broadcast thing kind of took off, and I made a conscious choice to just kind of not get into like that the tutorial side of that. First of all, good morning everybody that's here. My apologies about Facebook. Facebook is on crack. It would not normally, when I post the video to Facebook, I have to go in every time and manually switch it from private to public, but it would not go there. In any case, oh, there's more people. Hi. Welcome. I'm Doug. If we haven't met, welcome to the community, and we're talking about gear. So drop a question. You got one down below. All right. So the thing is that I kind of thought about making a bunch of videos about kind of like, hey, look, we knew that everybody was going to be creating content. Just go on to Instagram, and we know that. However, literally the phone has made that easy. However, the box down here, this guy right here, because I do have some bleed from the speakers. So I've got a mic here, and I think last week I was using the headphones because I've got the mic open on that cabinet. By the way, anybody down below, hey, Rick, congratulations on winning that contest, my friend. Great to see you. Doing great, my friend. Doing great. Proud of you, bro. PBC6X, there we go. And the mini effects gizmo. So over there is the this mini no. It's basically their parallel. The mini line mixer is gone. I have that too. I'm a bit of a PBC and RJM fanatic, but I also have their parallel mixer. So there's going to be a video coming on that, and they just make great stuff. Nicholas, hey, let's see. How about a little E flat with a little neck? Little neck pickup there. Welcome aboard. Thanks for saying hi. Welcome to the family, my friend. Hello, hello. So I have the Yamaha HSS speakers, and they rock when using plugins. So, here's this other thing. Is like, when looking for speakers, there are a couple of things that you want to be conscious of. we've talked about, and we talk about frequently, this concept of headroom, right? If by chance you're not familiar with the term of headroom, let's make the analogy that you've got a jug that you're going to fill with water. And if it's just about full and you turn the tap on, it just overflows. And that is basically the efficiency. If instead of water you thought about efficiency, at a certain volume level, a piece of gear will stop being efficient. It just kind of reaches the point of overflow. It's like, whoa, that's too much, right? So the ability to have monitors that can handle volume, and if you decide to mix loud, when you mix loud, still have clarity for all the individual instruments, and you can hear the bass defined. It's not blowing things out. The mid-range to treble, and all the frequencies are staying proportional to one another. And this is one of the other reasons John Cuniberti, producer and engineer for Surfing with the Alien and a bunch of the Satriani catalog, and a mastering engineer for the likes of Andrea Bocelli, and I mean just like everything. So he's one of the people that I have a privilege of working with, and he and I had this whole conversation about some headphones that hype up the mix, right? You're not really hearing reality. So your monitors are really, if you could say monitors are the sonic equivalent of strings to your fingers, right? Because they're that thing that's providing that that response, right? When you bend. Hold on, I'm not digging that tone. What can I do? Well, how about there? Hold on, almost there. Closer. All right, more like it. So the idea of being able to kind of go, look, do these monitors not only sound good here? Can I hear all these things? Can I hear my plugins? Can I hear? We want to be able to hear the direct signal. We want to be able to hear those trails or tails, but we also want to as we go through the dynamic range. And I realize I've got the mic up, so I'm losing a little bit. Well, hang on. All those layers in between, a really great set of monitors will allow you to hear that, because that's the information that we need to have to kind of make the decisions that we need to have. Last week I talked about the fact that, well, this is the other set, but there they are, about that, headphones are dramatically different experiences. This is just one of the things I'm going to have to get used to, because it's been one of the blind spots of just kind of like, I've been lax on it, and I'm just kind of like, all right, Doug, stop being a jerk. If you can't have an honest conversation with yourself, you're just like, dude, what are you thinking? Or, dudette, what are you thinking? All that to say, finding monitors that you love, and you don't have to spend $1 million like these. I started to say Focal, and then I started to say Focusrite, and then these are PreSonus. They sound great, and they're the 8-inch woofers. And so this is one of the things that you want to make a consideration about. One is how big is your room? Two, if possible, my suggestion would be to use an 8-inch woofer. I think it does a little bit better job. Well, in my opinion, it does a much better job of capturing the low frequencies of the guitar. Not just drum, but in particular, if you play heavy stuff, there's information that I think a larger woofer actually does a really great job covering. So, all right. Andrew Collins, hello. I don't think we've met, so welcome to the stream. Pleasure to meet you. So the question is, are they coming out with? So one, I'm under NDA. Two, I have intuition. Three, I can't say. And four, technically, I don't know. And because I'm under NDA, five, I'm not going to say anything other than something's going to happen on Wednesday, and it's going to be awesome. And I'm not being hopefully not being a schnoiky jerk about it. My guess is at a very minimum, there's going to be a massive firmware update, right? But the ability to, what's great is I'm kind of, in case you hadn't noticed, there's a bit of Line 6 gear here. I'm in the middle of kind of shooting this kind of retrospective video that kind of goes back again the 20 years that I've been using Line 6 gear, and talking about, bringing in some of the demos. And, the 2.8 demo that I played a minute ago is like, that's so many generations back. It may be that they're just going to go to what I believe is going to be maybe 4.0, right? I believe it's still in the threes, and I should know this, but I've been kind of busy making albums and kind of a little bit distracted in Boogie Land. So Scout's honor, hand to the heart. But the thing is that it was so exciting for me to kind of be able to go back and do this. All right, I'm going to tell a little story, and then I'm going to make sure I answer some questions in the chat here. So there's a funny story because it's an LA story. And this is the thing, is like we've all had our moments where we had a little bit of attitude. And the thing about this particular amp is literally in 2005, a friend of mine, another guy that's passed away, Andy Zane, a dear friend, was one of the organizers of a Hurricane Katrina benefit in Los Angeles. And we got a chance to play down on the Strip. It was a really, really big deal. Slash ended up playing later in the night. I didn't play with Slash, but he kind of flew back into town specifically for it, and there were a bunch of great bands. But, at that point, I was still, that was kind of my main live amp, and it worked great. And so I just kind of brought that down there, my instrumental band, Ott Manure on drums, Steve Serena on rhythm guitar. I think that might have been Uriah on bass. In any case, so, we're kind of there, and we're getting ready to kind of do sound checks, and there was somebody over in the club had this big, huge rack rig, and I could see them looking across the club at me and talking to their band member. They were looking at my amp, and they were laughing, and they were pointing. And, it's an interesting thing because, in those days, it was the old school thing of just like, yeah, bro. Yeah, and so I was like, okay, whatever, but then, the band played, and, I kind of, and like afterwards, the guy kind of sheepishly came up and was like, that thing sounds great. It was really just kind of one of those funny moments where you go, there it is. So literally on a night that I knew Slash was going to be there, I'm like, I was very proud to bring this amp, and it just served me so well. I've just been so thankful for Line 6 and the amazing company. All right, so I have to, I'm going to wade into the deep waters here, so that's kind of funny. So, first of all, Don Henley is one of my favorite composers, most brilliant songwriter, elicit emotions, tug at your heart, because he can do that thing where he takes lyrics and somehow knows just how to draw the picture in your head and the feeling in your heart. I mean, he's one of my favorite songwriters. But the funny thing is that there are some people that are not necessarily big Don Henley fans. I've never met him. I have a friend that knew him really well who loved him. So not having him ever met Don, I can cast no judgment one way or the other, other than to say he's one of my favorite writers. However, there was a little bit of sarcasm. Chris, you're one of my favorite guys ever. So we'll just leave it at that. Okay, hang on a second here. Thank you, Andrew. Wait a second. So... Right. So the last firmware update I did was 3.5. I did a video for that. Thank you, a Helix Geek. Thank you very much appreciated. So all right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask some people some questions because I'm going to make my list. If I were to design Helix 2.0, what would I want? If you've ever carried that sucker, is my backpack down here? It's somewhere down here. Through an airport, you kind of go, it's a little heavy. So one, what I want? I would want it to be lighter. I've been in their ear for at least 5 years about, let me capture my gear, please. And so here's the thing, not everybody wants to be able to capture and model their own gear. I get that. However, for the community of people that has like a Jose Mon and Marshall and the JH100, which is basically an exact Marshall-built clone of one of Jimi Hendrix's amps, and that is just nuts. to be able to capture that and bring that into the community would be really great. And I will say, my guess is maybe Line 6 is perhaps looking around kind of going, well, if we were to do this, what would we do, right? So the thing about that is the lighter capture functionality, kind of pretty much about everything about Helix I kind of love. I will tell you, speaking of innovation, this guy had a wah and a volume controller built into it. This is the other thing. Like, is this Cat 5? No. The other thing that Line 6 did that's genius, so long as you don't have one that's one that gets twisty, is the controller for that amp and the Variax cable were basically off a Cat 5, Cat 6 architecture, so you could find that cable anywhere. I'm a big Mesa Boogie fan, but many of Mesa Boogie's controller foot switch cables are proprietary. So if you get to the gig and you've forgotten your cable, you're running back to the amp and pushing buttons. I love my Boogie stuff dearly, but you know, there was some really smart stuff that they did. Another innovation that a lot of people don't necessarily know about, Andrew, my guess is that you do, is that you know, what I don't have is HX1, and I've got to get one of those. So in case you haven't seen that, that's about this big. However, this whole kind of nano pedal thing is cool. And this is kind of, again, if you take a look at this, if you could imagine basically this being, you know, let's just say Helix 2 Mini, right? So the concept of this whole thing, and if you weren't here earlier when I talked about this, basically these are the exact same pedal. They just have a different plate and some different stuff on the inside. But basically it's analogous to making firmware updates and doing things there. So the ability to have maybe, you know, okay, so getting back to dreaming, because now you got me thinking. So you've got your master unit, right? And then you've got your footprints, right? And that's one of the things that Line 6 has done so well. We were talking about HX Stomp XL before, which is, to me, the perfect form factor. It's about yay big. You can easily carry it anywhere. Now, another thing about that particular device, however, is if you forget your proprietary power supply, you're hosed. Same thing with HX Stomp, unless you've got a pedal board that kind of has enough power to do all of that stuff. So that little piece right there, and I had that same conversation with my dear friends at Fractal. Come here. I've dropped a few things on this show. I love the VP4, but it has a wall wart. It does not have the native IEC cable, which is what I got right here. So this type of connection, in case you didn't know, which everybody does now anyway, this IEC connection means that even if you forget your power cable, you can plug it in and it works. Now it does require apparently about that much more space inside the unit. However, gosh, showing up at the gig and forgetting your power supply or losing it, or, you know, something happening where gear gets separated for whatever reason and your power supply is in one place and your unit is another, it's just a disaster kind of waiting to happen. That's one of the things I love about Helix, the IEC jacks on the back there, and it's a great feature. I'm 99% positive that, yeah, of course, my AxFX 3 has got an IEC connection on the back. Helix Rack's got an IEC connection on the back as well. So in any case, the idea then is like you've got inside this architecture, but, you know, this range of products that allow you to have this kind of modular thing where it's kind of the form factor, and then you kind of figure out, okay, you know, given how amazing the processing power has gotten, how small do you need it to be to do what you need it to do, right? So, and, you know, and these little pedals are just, it's crazy. So I'm sure, you know, the interesting thing is these companies begin to look at each other and kind of go circular. You know, what's great about some of the newer arrivals is some of the older guard gets a chance to kind of go, that's pretty crafty. And it's very exciting. That's pretty darn crafty. Fulcrum is hiding at the moment. I actually can see Fulcrum right up there, and there's more gear on the way over to Fulcrum, but Fulcrum is coming. So just as a quick moment, so Sonia has designed this brilliant controller that basically it's a Y and X axes expression pedal. So it's a dual expression pedal. And it's absolutely genius. And so what she's talking about is actually having the Tone X1 inside there and then being able to use that. And as I understand, Sonia, you also have a MIDI version. So there's kind of like, all sorts of exciting stuff happening in that mind of yours. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Great question. Thank you for asking. Okay. Love that. Okay. Stepped on my looper. There are a multitude of situations where you want to use it. The first and most common place that people have traditionally used DI boxes, which stands for direct injection, is if you've got an instrument like a bass and you're running into the PA, it allows you to get the instrument level to... I'm going to get this wrong. I knew this, and now it basically takes us from instrument level to what I believe is line level. And if it's not line level, it's to mic level. But it basically takes the output level of your guitar and basically makes it so the PA can digest it, right? The other thing is that it enables you in a live setting to be able to take the output of your Helix or whatever modeling device that you're using. And again, it's on the other side of the room. I have a stereo DI from the good folks at Radial. That's a great box and enables you to do a couple of very important things. Number one, it enables you to get the level of your modeling device friendly to go into the PA. Number two, if it's a stereo device, it enables you to do that in stereo. And also, many of these devices, not all of them, have quarter-inch jacks versus XLR. And so your average PA is generally running on XLR cables only, a la this, right? So the point being is if you've only got quarter-inch cables, like on the back of HX Stomp or HX Stomp XL, you've also got to get a way of getting there. Also, the same thing is true of... although there's not modeling on this, VP4, right? So that is arguably in a modern day usage the most common place you probably need it, because I got quarter-inch jacks. How do I get from my quarter-inch into the PA? The same thing is true if you see somebody with a keyboard. They're going to be running generally out of two tip sleeve cables. And so basically this is what you would call an unbalanced cable / a mono cable, if you will. You'd be running out of two of those into, again, a stereo DI. So you're basically using it in addition to adjusting the level so it's proper to go into the PA. You're also then using it, and I don't know whether the keyboard level, naturally, if you had XLRs on the keyboard, if it would natively be at the right level. However, this enables you to do that. And so you're now using it basically as like a giant adapter. However, there are a couple of other really, really important things about this. One is that there will be a ground lift that enables you if, for example, the PA is on the far side of the room and you're on this side of the room, you're plugged into different outlets that are on different power runs, you can get a hum. And so it allows you to eliminate that by lifting the ground. And that is arguably, in terms of form and function, one of the most valuable things you can have. Thank you. Okay, so here's one of the other things about this. So I'm going to go to the edge and maybe just a little bit beyond of my area of expertise, but let's also talk about the duration of the run, because that's essentially what Sonia's also hit upon. So let's just say you're in a live situation, because I'm going to presume, hang on a second, who asked this? Artie, do me a favor. Where are you playing? let me know, please. So the idea is, in a live situation, you've got this big giant run, right? So let's just say we ran a 50-foot guitar cable. One is that is going to, after about 18 feet, you get a reduction in high end on a guitar cable. It just begins to roll off, and at a certain point, it just begins to sound a little muted, and increasingly so. However, when you convert it to a balanced signal, there are a couple of things that happen there. On a balanced XLR run, there's this crazy thing that it does where it's kind of like a humbucking pickup. And what it does is it phase cancels any noise other than the direct signal coming through through the cabling. I'm not smart enough and educated enough to explain it better than that. All that is to say is it's set up on the send and the receive. That is to say you're coming from your DI box to your PA. It utilizes the ability to flip the phase. So if, for example, I've got a left and right delay there. If I were to take one of those delays and then make them both so they had the same time, delay time, and then flip the phase, so instead of one going up, the other's going down, and I were to sum that to mono, they would cancel each other out because they're literally one's going up. How can I do this? One's going up by this amount, and the other is going down by that amount. If they're happening at the same time, they will just cancel each other out. So it does that with any noise that gets introduced along the length of that. So that is to say, cables are. If I let's see if I can get it to do it. Let's see if it's going to do it. Here we go. So that's EMF, electromagnetic interference. And so as that cable goes along, it's next to computers and outlets and stuff. And so what it does is it takes the signal and analyzes the signal that's going through there, and then also analyzes for any additional things and cancels out the noise. It's kind of flippin' genius. I did a crap job of explaining it, but that's kind of what it does. But it's fascinating, and it's one of the reasons why a DI box is so valuable, because it allows you to filter out any noise you get on the line. Thank you for Sonia. I appreciate that. Sorry that was such a lame explanation. Let's see. As I was scrolling through YouTube Shorts the other day, I stumbled across a short of you on stage with Joe's white JS ripping a solo over Going Down. Joe whispered something and was loving it. That's so funny. That's funny. I didn't know that there was a short of that. So what's funny, so this past year, not this year, but the early year, and this is kind of one of the other things about, as I was mentioning before, about kind of like with an amp, you have to kind of ride it like a horse. You just kind of go, all right, I'm getting on the saddle. The horse is going to do what it's going to do. And that night that I sat in with Joe and Steve and Eric and Vic Johnson, who plays with Sammy when Joe's not playing with Sammy, it was playing one of Joe's guitars and playing through. It was before Joe was using the Dragon Live, so it was one of the JS Marshalls. It's really loud. There's all sorts of stuff going on, and you've just got to kind of have your wits about you and figure out how you're going to make somebody else's guitar and somebody else's amp do something such that you don't wake up the next morning and go, I just want to die. Because, everybody has nights that are better than others, so it just happens. In any case, so that was kind of fun. I'm glad that that's out there. All right. Awesome. Let me make sure I'm not missing it. Oh, first of all, sorry, Adam. Hey. Boy, I've been kind of hanging out in the bluesy vibe. Hang on, let's do this. Not bad for a 20-year-old amp. That's more like it. All right. Let's see here. So, Chris, the slide. Yeah, so the other thing that I learned that night is if the action on the slide is a little too low. Joe's guitars, the action is really low, and the slide seemed like a really good idea at the time. Action was too low. High E string, hard. The actions, and that's the other thing about the. The thing about a slide, you don't want to obviously fret the notes. Action on this guitar is just a little low on the top. But the thing about slide is it's got such a lovely vocal quality. If you don't use a slide, first of all, I would suggest going into a music store and trying a bunch of different slides. The great thing is that many stores that are larger, Dunlop will have a display, and these are actually various Dunlop slides. And these different slides have a different character, obviously. There's an earthiness about these kind of ceramic slides. However, for me, they're too heavy. So my favorite ends up being these glass slides. This is literally about half the weight of this guy, and it doesn't do that. But I will admit, gosh, that's But, you know, if you haven't messed with them, even if it's just a matter of just kind of finding a place to, it's a really nice. Even if you don't do that kind of, that kind of crazy stuff. got such a pretty singing like quality. Hey, there's Eric. What's going on, my man? One of the things I've been trying to do. Get kind of a slidey quality. Come on. There we go. All right. Curious. What was streaming? Oh, there we go. Oh, thank you. Oh boy. Sorry. Oh, that's not going to work at all. Holy cow. You know, you can play slide out of tune, but you can't play chords. So that, Albert, thank you very much for asking. Very kind. So that is the, oh my word. Behave. That's a string that's about to break. By the way, if you own a locking, fine-tuning tremolo and you all of a sudden notice the string just goes completely wacko, and the strings are old enough that you might be having a breakage, usually the sign's like, oh, that string's about to break. G string's on its way. So that is the song called Self-Portrait. Gosh, I can't believe I... Oh, boy. I'm not going to try it again. So that was from the first album that we're getting ready to re-release. I've been taking this Spotify class. And so there's a guy named Chris Greenwood. Actually, this week... hang on a second here. Let me see what I can do. New Spotify challenge. Spotify challenge. He's going to be doing his... Oh, hang on just one second. Chris Greenwood. Chris Greenwood. All right. Gosh darn it. All right. Give me just one moment. Let me see if I can get this. And it's going to autoplay, so give me just a moment. No. Shush. There we go. Let me see if this is the right link. There we go. Okay, great. This should be... All right, so this is my buddy Chris Greenwood. He is the guy that I am, and gosh, am I annoyed with Facebook today. He is my, I want to be here. There we go. I'm putting this down below in the chat on YouTube. First of all, thanks everybody for watching today. I really appreciate it. Let's get you down here. There we go. Come on. Scroll. All right, so you just... There we go. All right. So this is the link for his Spotify thing. It's 100% free. I will add that kind of the tail end of that thing is that He does have people that come into his inner circle, and I'm kind of one of those people. It was not an inexpensive thing, but this Spotify challenge, maybe if it's not free, it's like $100 or less. Apologize for misspeaking myself. It is worth every penny if you're getting ready to launch your next album. So what ended up happening is that I'm getting ready to release an instrumental album with some guest artists like Joe Satriani, and then a vocal album with a guy named Caleb Johnson who won American Idol. And I'm kind of in the midst of wrapping up those tracks, and I'm also hopefully about to book this crazy background vocal session in Los Angeles with a great producer who's going to help produce the background vocals for the vocal album. Really excited about that. So that kind of happened yesterday. Looks like it's in process. But Chris's process about Spotify and how to build your Spotify audience without paying out a bunch of money to be on people's playlists is a big deal. So if that's something of interest to you, I would strongly advise checking that out. He's awesome. In any case, found out that the first album wasn't on Spotify, and I was like, okay. So in preparation for releasing these other albums, I'm going to re-release the first album. It's its 30th anniversary, so that song that I get... I can't believe I can't remember that. Any case, so that's the song called Self. So no, that's Self-Poison. But in any case, that's going to be probably the first single that's off of there. I can't believe I just did that. Terrible. Well, okay. A little more like it. All right. So the deal is that is going to be allowing me to, one, share that music with people that haven't necessarily heard it. Two, use it as a tool to kind of kickstart what's happening with Spotify, and then use that to in turn build into the instrumental album, and in turn use that to build into the vocal album. Pretty exciting. Thank you for asking, my friend. Shane, what's going on? Line 6 day. So these stands right there, hang on a second. I'm going to get you over to, hang on a second. I want to get you right here. Give me a moment. Give me a moment. Those are on-stage stands, and I actually made a video about those stands, and I'm going to share the link right now in 5. There we go. Getting that link. There we go. Getting that link. Get shareable link. There we go. Thank you. Get back over here. Share that link. Give me a moment. Those are on stage. No. That's a little delay there. Here we go. All right. There we go. There's the link for that. So it's an on-stage stand, and those have been great. And the video that I made for that, the first, I actually ended up getting a second one. The very first one that I had, the wheels, one of the wheels broke off after like 10 years. And what happened was, I don't know whether I kind of tensioned it or something that I got, and I gave it a little pull. You know how sometimes a wheel will spin around, kind of be not in the following direction, but they'll be kind of ahead. And in that case, I gave it a little pull, and I felt it go, and the wheel broke off the first one. So, but I bought one of the new ones, and I liked it so much, I bought a second one. So, besides the broken wheel thing, which literally was like 10 years, and it might have been something that I did kind of, in the studio here, they're great. And the ability to just kind of roll these puppies around nice and steady. You can obviously adjust the height and the angle of these things. And then there are these little ears on the end here that you can use to adjust, and then kind of tension with these little adjusters that are on the bottom to keep it nice and taut. Very, very convenient, especially if you want to sit and be able to kind of mess with the stuff, especially something that's as tactile as Helix. All right. So I have a gig tonight, and I'm going to be spending some time prepping for that. And I've also got my singular lesson with one of my crazy, he's 15 now, and he's just an insane guitar player. So I've got my one lesson of the day, and then everybody else I kind of bump to tomorrow. But if anybody else has any additional questions that I can answer before I jet on out of here, it would be my pleasure and my privilege to do that. I'm going to be down in Los Angeles, like I said, in the middle of this week, but I will be back next Saturday, and I'm in the midst of doing kind of a, thank you, Line 6, for all the fun and all that stuff. I got a gig tonight. Albert, am I going to see you there, my friend? You know what? I've got a couple of... I didn't give any guitar lesson tips today, so I'm going to throw a couple of things out here before we close. So the deal is... thank you, Chris. Much appreciated. So one of the things that people have a problem with is bending. And I had a student earlier in the week that had this thing happen where basically... where they, like many vocalists, and you know the phenomenon where they kind of... They work their way up to the note and then kind of add vibrato before they actually get the... You know, excellent, Albert. I look forward to seeing you, my friend. But the idea... So the idea is playing the note you're bending to. In this case, it's just an A. And the idea is... There you go. And you're building muscle memory of feeling how much string tension you need to have to get that note there, as opposed to adding some vibrato at the end. And it means you can do a release vibrato like that, which is one of my favorite vibratos. Again, what I'm doing there... going up to the note and doing these little dips, but the trick is, if you can't get that other note happening, that A there, and kind of get back up to it, it loses the whole. And there I was doing the full whole step. Might also not be bad to do that as well, because that way, again. Actually, it's kind of really cool. The idea is that way you're using your ear, and we're not looking for adding vibrato. Sorry. I'm going to modify that a little bit. I'm going to play the two notes. And I'm going to kill the delay and the reverb because it's kind of driving me nuts. So let me get that out of there. Come on, GA. And so you can do that. Now doing it backwards, where you've got it pre-bent. And then so that's a, if I've been in tune, that's a first finger bend. By the way, some of you may find you're gonna develop a little bit more callus than you had this morning, but the idea is that's a first finger bend on the third string. I'm back at G and A. So I tried to switch from the one lick to the other. I didn't quite make it. So it's just back and forth initially. Stupid sounding lick, but the reason that's valuable is you get used to. I guess I'm red. I'm an A. That was terrible, but I'm bending from C to D, whole step. D to E. That's gonna be a finger twister. Doing here. So that was basically with bends. That's pretty good. So I would suggest if initially you're not able to hit the notes, which I didn't do a great job, but good enough, just go. And then but the neat thing about that most of us, if we're playing in the pattern number one, most of us bend on the upper note on the upper strings. But one of the places I use a lot of that. Now that bend, no, okay, so the idea, that little, oh, okay, what I'm doing there, oh boy, not gonna work. So what I'm trying to do is get the string to climb up over the top of that nail there, and my first finger just doesn't quite have the fourth and the ability to slide up as well as my third finger there. So literally that G string is kind of up over there. You can see it's over the top of that. And the first finger just doesn't have quite as much. All right, that'll be kind of cool. So we're at E here, at the 5th fret and at the 17th fret. And basically we're practicing just going, taking the A minor pentatonic scale, and I kind of ended up walking it. Initially I started at E there, but I walked it up to the G. That's G, A, G, A. Not perfect, but I'll be working on that. So it's really kind of cool in that, bending is such an important, I'm going to add a little bit of delay and reverb back in. Bending is such a, what I meant to play. But you can take a motif like that. All right, then We're in A mix Lydian, which is, by the way, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, A. Or like an A major scale with a flat 7. And the advantage of going up and down the neck on one string is that it gives you, the tension feels a little bit different in different areas of the neck. So there you're just getting comfortable, like going, hey, it's actually kind of a cool exercise. I need to spend some time doing that. And it just gets you really comfortable doing nothing but finding the pitches, but really the important part is in the tactile sense of feeling how far you have to have the string bent to get it to tension. And it will be different, the feel of it, as you move from guitar to guitar, but you know, as you kind of get used to the feel of each of the instruments, you just kind of begin to know this is how far I need to push or pull that string to get it to move that half step, whole step, or that minor third, right? Or a major third if you're crazy. And at the end, I add a little perfect fourth. That's flat 7, 1, 3, 4, 1. So that I'm at that's D and E, and G sharp, A, E. That'll kind of build some calluses there. Oh, hang on a second. First of all, Johnny, hey, hello. How goes it, my man? Great to see you. Howdy. Now, I know you from the Line 6 community, right? Correct me if I get it wrong. You're the guy from the UK, yeah? All right. Kevin. This is an S1, and first of all, my life is it's blessed. I have this amazing relationship with the folks at Mesa Boogie and Kramer and Gibson. So this is a guitar that's kind of on extended loan, and it's a funny thing. And this will be kind of the last thing that I'm gonna. Speedwagoner. Oh, thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Facebook hates me today. So I don't quite know why I didn't want to make my private link public. Thank you. Much appreciated. So the thing is that I've never been a neck through body kind of player. Just kind of, it sounds a little bit different. I think there is in my opinion, there's a snap that you get with a bolt-on neck. Somehow the connection there... Oh, thank you. It's going to be at a place called Antlers in Pinole from 4 until 8. I'm going to go on at about 6 o'clock. If you go to my Facebook page, you will see... And hang on a second here. Oh, right. Oh, no, I can't do that. I can do that. Hold on. Oh, I'm so annoyed with Facebook. Oh, so annoying. Just, all right, sorry. Let me share the link. There we go. You link that here. YouTube there. Okay, there we go. There it is. Would love to see you, Nick. I'm going to go on at about 6. I'm playing with tracks, but I'll do my best to do my best. So Kevin, this guitar showed up, and like I said, first of all, it has a 24 fret neck, which we're talking about the bending thing. See. Well, I haven't messed with that enough. That's kind of cool. So the thing is that I've pretty much always played 22 fret neck because I'm like, oh no, I don't like what it does to the neck pickup. It moves it out of position out of the 24th fret, blah blah blah. Well, I kind of got over that. And gosh darn it, not having the flip and heel there, you can get way, obviously it's a 24 fret neck, so you can get further up. But the thing is, I'm way up at the top of the neck. Even if I went like. I've got my thumb around the top of the neck here, and I've got total access to the top there. I'm like, oh, man. Now, there is one thing about this guitar. Oh, hang on a second. Do I have it in here? Where I have? There's one modification I'd make, and I've got it kind of like I've got to have a Scouts Honor thing. And Trent, if you're watching, I love you dearly. So my artist relations, he hates it when I call him my artist relations handler. He actually watches on Saturdays sometimes, so I got to be careful what I say. There's one thing about the guitar that I didn't like. And on the volume pot, there is a feature that I normally like, which is what's called a treble bleed. It means when you turn the volume down, it basically, the treble bleeds through and the bass gets cut out. It's this little capacitor. X picofarads. They're measured in picofarads. And I remember years ago, it's actually kind of an interesting thing. The sticker guitar that's on the cover of the first album, this guitar, used to belong to a guy named Todd Crew. Rest in peace. You get old, you know more dead people. It's a really strange feeling. But it was originally red. But kind of that was the guitar that I quote unquote got good on. That was like a really important guitar to me. Still got it. But it had this, basically it's a high pass filter as you roll off, or the treble bleed as you roll off the volume control. It cuts the bass, and so it cleans the guitar basically. By cutting out the lower frequencies, which can be a little bit more boomy, it kind of cleans the guitar up. It's a really neat thing, and I remember bringing it to one of my lessons with Joe, and he's like, I said, you want to play it? I said, sure. And he said, oh, I really like that. And whether it was a result of that got built into the JS guitars or not, it's in those guitars because it's a great feature. But I remember him going like, oh, I really like that, because he had his main guitar was a Kramer Pacer, I think it was. And I've got a Focus over there, and they're very, very, very similar guitars. And his guitar didn't have that in there, so we kind of when they started working on the Satriani guitars, that was one of the things that obviously got built in there and is still in there. And so great feature. However, this particular one, the value was too much, so what ended up happening, the taper of the pot is a big part of the way I play. Is that different? So so we ended up cutting that out. I took it to Gary Brower, my tech. we opened up the back cavity, and I just saw him pull out the snipper and go, oh, this is going to be interesting. And he just took it out. And so the taper is how I like it. I just now don't have the treble bleeding. And unfortunately, the value of that particular cap was just such that you lost the gradation. So it kind of like went from about there to there. Kevin, with pleasure. No, thank you so much. So let's see. The other thing about it is it's got Seymour Duncan's. I'm technically a DiMarzio endorser. And there are things that this 20-year-old amp does better than others. So let me clean up the neck pick. All the way up. Neck pick. Oh, wait. So let me try and accentuate. This is not the best neck pickup tone, but if I go neck pickup. Oh wait, sorry, my bad. I went back to number 4. Down here, it's going to be a little. It's not quite the right sound for that, but. It's got a. Right, that kind of. It's kind of halfway because these are. Again, another thing that I was like, I don't like rails, and I was kind of like, you know what? They sound great. I will say, decades back when rails kind of first came out, one of the things that manufacturers were trying to do was kind of create the output of a rail pickup in the form factor of a narrow aperture pickup. And so they ended up being bright and unpleasant to the ear, but that right there is kind of like if a Strat and a Les Paul kind of had a little love child pickup. Because it's got a little bit of that singing. But it's also got... That didn't articulate. It's got the singing nature of a Les Paul neck pickup, but it's got a little bit of the throatiness of a Strat. Going down to the number 4 position. Pulls a little bit of that, the bottom out. One of my favorite things about this guitar is the way that it hears the pick attack. Seems like a funny thing to say, but now the dreaded middle pickup. One of the best middle pickups I've ever played, and then down in the number 2 position. Back off on the volume control. Now that's where I'm missing the treble bleed, because that's where you want to pull just a little bit of the bottom end out. Because there, it's got a little bit more on the bottom than I want. I want to have that. If I pick closer a bit. Just a little wide there, and when I back that off. However, the other thing is there's this little switch here. The guy right here. And that's a nice tone right there. and then all the way down the bridge with the switch in the lower position. Arguably my favorite position on this guitar, the bridge position, with the switch now in the upper position. It's not a series, it's not a coil tap because it's not getting rid of one of the coils. It'd be buzzing more, but I think it's series parallel. Maybe it is a coil tap. Wait, why are you not making all that terrible noise now? In any case, flippin' great guitar. And the Floyd stays in tune pretty darn well. Okay. Kevin. Yeah, so the TC, it's over there. That's a really, really important amp to me. As much as I've got Badlanderitis, the TC is another amp, thanks to my buddy Albert. Albert, you know, I always say that I'm an expensive friend, but Albert is an expensive friend. There are two amps that are in the room here that I get to actually credit him, thankfully, for. But the TC50, and ironically, this Line 6 cabinet here basically got thrown in there. So, awesome. Hey, wait a second. There we go. Hey. Ada, do we know each other? If not, hello and welcome aboard. I love that photo. I just bought my first 2-amp of Vox Night Train. By the way, those are great amps. Is there anything I should be aware of before I buy a cab? That's a great question. Love that. All right, I've got to get out of here in 13 minutes. I got to be gone. But what a great question. All right, here we go. So, first of all, do me a favor. And Mauricio Abogado, hello, how you doing? So this is their Floyd Rose that's on here. So it's got the screw-in bar, so it's kind of like the original, but the original one had, of course, the non-screw-in bar, which actually this is kind of a big improvement. So it's one of the variants of the Floyd Rose, but it's a really good Floyd. And this guitar is not grossly expensive in the world of, you know, like bazillion-dollar guitars. So there. All right. Thank you for asking. I hope that was sufficient. Ada, or Ada, but I think it's Ada. So, and anybody in cabinet world, number one thing that I can strongly suggest doing, you've got that Night Train. First of all, it's a great amp. My buddy Rick Skillman, he used to be the OEM, original equipment manufacturer guy for Celestion. So he was the guy that basically, you got to, with pleasure, thank you. I love that. Dear Mauricio. So, entonces, all right, so the deal is that Rick Skillman had this Night Train, and he had a Celestion, he was at the LA Amp Show, and he had this beautiful, first of all, what guitar are you playing into it? All right, so zooming out, intelligent answer. The guitar and the style that you play has a lot to do with the type of enclosure that you want to use. If you want to use for example, a Telecaster, and you're looking for something that's kind of spanky, but at the same time has some warmth when you move to the neck position and you've got the range of more vintagey tones, you're probably going to do better with a 212 open back cabinet. If you want something that's super easy to use, a 112 cabinet is also really nice because, you know, it's just kind of throw and go, if you will. The 212 is larger, but one of the things that I've been having a conversation with Trent, my dear friend at Mesa Boogie, is we've been talking about the size of the cabinet and how big a difference it actually makes in terms of projecting your sound into the venue if you're playing live venues. So the other question then is, sorry, I didn't zoom out far enough. What style or styles of music do you play? What instruments or main instrument do you use? Are you going to be using pedals? So the Nitrate, again, it's a great amp. It's got kind of a nice vintagey but gainy thing going on. And my buddy Rick's Telecaster, it was kind of a no-caster into that amp. I don't remember what Celestine cabinet it was, but I have a vague recollection that it was a 410 Marshall cabinet loaded with Celestine greenbacks. I could be wrong, but I was like, wow. It was a sound and just like, whoa, right? So, and the thing about that particular blend is if you think about Stevie Ray, the Super Reverb, which is one of the amps that Stevie used, and they would use a tube screamer into the front end, or a fuzz face, is that tens, although for many guitar players it's not the right speaker. If you're looking for something that kind of has a vintage vibe to it, so let's see if I can get there a little bit here. A little less edge. A little bit kind of more of breathiness to it. A closed back cabinet has a tendency to have a whole bunch of projection forward as opposed to where it kind of breathes the notes. And you can actually, when you're on stage with it, you can feel the sound bouncing off the back wall, and it actually surrounds you versus a 412 cabinet where it projects it. It's really, it's kind of the difference between having a hose that you kind of put your thumb over and goes and it just points in one direction versus kind of you put it like one of those spray kind of things you can get on the end. It kind of spreads the water out. And it makes a really big difference. So the main guitar you play, the styles you play, or the main guitars you play, then that cabinet, if you're looking for something that's tighter, a 112, a 212 closed back enclosure. Ironically, tonight there's that cabinet. It's a 212 vertical cabinet on top of a 212 horizontal cabinet. Now, my personal preference in 212 world is, and most 212, well, it's not so much these days. Increasingly, you're seeing vertical 212s. My preference is a vertical 212, which is why I have a new Mesa Boogie vertical 212 that I'm going to be playing tonight. I'm going to be playing a pair of them, and I can separate them out like that. Those are my 412s. And so the thing about those are big enough and heavy enough that having the 212, you're just like, wheel that puppy along. You don't need somebody else to help you load it. It's a much easier experience. And you put two of them together, if you need them close together, you have much of the same girth as a 412. Maybe not quite as much because the four speakers are not sharing a common space, but the ability to separate them out and use them in stereo is one of the benefits. So I'm a big fan of two cabinets. So just for pisses and giggles, another option that would be great for that particular amp, because it's actually, like I said, a great amp, would be to use a pair of, depending on how tight a sound you need, two 112 cabinets. And that way, even though it won't really be stereo, it's dual mono, or I just say it's two speakers, but you pull them apart on the left and right hand side of the room, or for a little bit of separation, or you can stack them, or you can do whatever, is that then you kind of get a little bit more spatiality. The thing that you got to watch out with 112 cabinets is they sit down on the ground. So what's actually the cabinet is actually saying, so let's say I kind of turn my mouth like this and I talk right into the microphone that you can't see, and then I turn my mouth like that. There's a difference between the projection of the sound of the speaker coming forward, and it's a big deal. So the challenge when your speakers are on the floor is you won't hear them. It's actually hear them on axis, which means you're going to miss a lot of the high end, which means if you're miking it up, your sound person is going to hear a much brighter sound than you are. And there's that discrepancy between what you think it sounds like and what everybody else thinks it sounds like. Because when you're on a stage, what's pointed at the back of your leg is actually pointed much towards the chest and the head of the audience. So it's something that, you know, I had this experience in San Francisco on at the end of a little tour. And I hopped off stage, and I was just so blown away because it's something that I know, but it's because I had the cabinets lower. I was like, I didn't realize it was that extreme. And that particular experience, I was like, wow. So I really love a 212 vertical cabinet. Marshall's making them. I think the idea would be to again take your number one guitar, or number one and number two guitar, and your head into a music store and just try some different cabinets out. I think that would be great. There we go. Hang on a second. There we go. I have two Strats. One is an HSS. One is what? That is the funniest thing. I love it. One's a Silver Sky SE. That's hilarious. Paul Reed Smith would be happy, and Leo Fender would be humored. First of all, great guitars. The SE is a fabulous guitar. I play some blues with Silver Sky and SE, rock metal with the HSS Strat. I will be using pedals with it. I'm using it in my bedroom. So the thing that you want to keep in mind again is, if you can, the temptation is to keep a 112 cabinet is probably fine for your bedroom, but if it's on the ground, if you actually get where a microphone would be placed, you're going to find it's brighter. I will say one of the coolest sounds is actually having the cabinet not on axis and just kind of on the floor in your bedroom, but it will be brighter than you think it is. So getting it up, so kind of all my speakers are kind of ear level, because I want to know the information. Like that amp, that cabinet over there lives with a microphone on it now. And so much of what I do is like, I've got it mic'd up because I'm really getting used to just training myself to go, what does my rig sound like with a microphone on? So I really understand that. But in a bedroom, first of all, if I would suggest checking out a vertical 212 cabinet. The Mesa Boogie ones are pricey. The Marshall has some reasonably priced ones that, again, what you want to do is bring both those guitars, walk into a music store with your valve train, and try out a couple of different cabinets, and which one you kind of go, oh, that feels like me, right? Great question. Fine, use Legacy 212. Our dear friend, there we go. Okay, so we get into a very interesting thing, and I'm going to run out of time. I've got 2 minutes, so let me see if I can cram a bunch of stuff in here. Lots of great meat on the bone. Most people end up falling in love with one of three main speakers. AC 30 people have a tendency to like a Celestian Blue, an Alnico Blue. Marshall people have a tendency to love, actually, I'm going to go for a G1275T or a greenback. And then, so we had the Alnico Blue, 75T, the greenback. The other speaker I'm thinking about, right, the Vintage 30. Now the Vintage 30 has a little bit of a spike right around 2.5K. Let's see if I can kind of get it. So a little bit, that little bit of a pokiness that I kind of tried to elicit from my. And I'm not referring to the pinch harmonic. There's a little bit of there's a frequency there that for heavy playing, when you add all the bigness and the bassness of it, it adds clarity and gives you this full sound. But for people who generally want to go for a more bluesier tone, and you're not emphasizing those lower frequencies and all that girth, that frequency becomes more apparent as you take that other information away. When you add that other information, it actually provides a layer of balance. Chances are you'd like a vintage 30. So, there's the horizontal rectifier 212 cabinet. It's got a lot of girth to it because it's a wider, deeper cabinet. Think about a 212 slant is the top is narrower because it's slanted, so it's not as deep a cabinet. But I have the advantage of being able to have the upper speaker pointed at me. Those are all vintage 30s. I love them, and they work great for cleaner tones as well. And this is a older Line 6. By the way, if you want the greatest deal ever, these Line 6 cabinets are loaded with vintage 30s, and you can get them for $300 all day long. There's one on Guitar Center right now for about $300 or $350. And most of the time, they'll ship it to a local store real cheap, and you got 45 days to return it if you don't like it. All right, it is time for me to teach a lesson. I thank each of you. Awesome. Pleasure was mine. Dr. Phil, thank you. Always a pleasure. Dr. Phil's rocking the G1275Ts. Great to see you. And again, those Mesa cabinets are great. All right. Carvin makes a pretty versatile with an Eminence. So Eminence is another great brand. My guy that used to be at Celestine's now at Eminence. Great question. Lots of meat on that bone. Hopefully I didn't kind of make it too muddled, but those are the nuances. Everybody have a great one, and I'll see you next week, and we will know, is the new Helix going to drop on Wednesday then? Thanks so much for hanging out, and have a great week. Eric, always a pleasure. Ada, I wish I could, but I live in Asia. Not a lot of guitar stores exist here. You know what? Nick, great to see you. So if you get a chance to drop in next week, maybe we can kind of revisit some of this, and let me find a couple of different ways to demonstrate some of the other nuances of this, because this is great talk. All right.